Leo adjusted the camouflage settings of his adaptive armor, blending into the neon-lit streets of Haven's Edge. The perpetual fog cast an otherworldly glow over the city, a bustling spaceport precariously perched on the galaxy's outer rim. It was the perfect refuge for those who thrived in the shadows. Years of survival instincts made him pause at the entrance to the Crimson Nebula, the city's most infamous nightclub. Something was off. The usual crowd of traders and mercenaries looked uneasy, their glances shifting too frequently. Through the haze, a flicker of pink hair caught his eye. The woman moved with a graceful precision that stirred a faint sense of familiarity. Her blue skin glowed faintly under the harsh neon lights, and the fitted jacket she wore barely concealed the embedded Caldwell tech. Leo recognized the design immediately. It was authentic, a rarity among the knockoffs flooding the black market. Interesting, he muttered, activating his armor's scanning mode. The readings confirmed his suspicion. Genuine Caldwell artifacts. The woman stopped briefly at a vendor's stall, her demeanor casual, but her sharp, calculated gaze scanned the crowd at regular intervals. She was being followed. Leo spotted them soon enough. 3 figures in plain clothes moving with a deliberate coordination. The woman's body language shifted subtly, a slight tensing of her shoulders that only someone as observant as Leo might catch. When she whispered something under her breath, her voice, amplified by his armor's audio sensors, struck a chord deep in his memory. Without hesitation, she slipped into a narrow alleyway, her pursuers following close behind. Leo cursed softly, activating his stealth mode as he scaled a nearby wall to get a clear vantage point. The alley below became a stage for confrontation. The woman turned swiftly, her pink hair slicing through the mist as she faced her pursuers head-on. 3 of you? Just for me? She asked, her tone laced with mockery. I'm flattered. One of the men stepped forward, his face obscured by a hooded cloak. Lady Astra, he said coldly. The Shadow Legion sends its regards. Now, hand over the artifacts. Leo froze. Astra. The name tugged at a memory of a bright-eyed, blue-skinned girl from the Caldwell estate who had followed him everywhere, curious about everything. Go to hell, Astra snapped, her hand brushing a bracelet on her wrist. Leo instantly recognized it as a Caldwell defense device. No need for violence, the hooded man said, his tone almost patronizing. We just want what rightfully belongs to us. Astra's laugh was sharp and defiant. Belongs to you? These artifacts have been in my family for generations. You're nothing more than thieves. So be it, the man said with a shrug. At his signal, his companions drew weapons humming with forbidden tech. Leo decided it was time to intervene. He dropped from his perch, his armor absorbing the impact as he landed between Astra and her attackers. His adaptive camouflage flickered, making it appear as though he had emerged from the mist itself. Evening, gentlemen, Leo said, his voice casual as he surveyed the 3 men. 3 against 1? Seems a bit unfair, don't you think? This isn't your business, the leader growled. Behind Leo, Astra tensed. I don't need your help, stranger, she said sharply. Leo smirked under his helmet. Her tone was exactly as he remembered it, strong-willed and fiercely independent. Maybe not, he replied, keeping his focus on the attackers. But I'm offering it anyway. The leader fired first, but Leo's armor anticipated the trajectory, allowing him to sidestep and counterattack in a single motion. The fight was quick and decisive. Years of survival experience, combined with advanced Caldwell tech, left the attackers incapacitated. As the last man fell, Leo turned to Astra. She stood poised, her bracelet glowing faintly as energy pulsed within it. Her expression was sharper, more mature than he remembered. But her piercing gaze still held that same fiery intelligence. Who are you? She demanded, her voice edged with suspicion. Leo hesitated. Revealing his identity might complicate things further. Just someone who doesn't like unfair odds, he said finally. Her eyes narrowed. That's Caldwell tech you're wearing? Stolen? You could say it was inherited, he replied, gesturing toward the unconscious men. Shadow Legion. They're getting bold, coming out this far. They're persistent, Astra admitted, though she didn't lower her guard. Why did you help me? Leo shrugged, masking the wave of nostalgia her presence triggered. Maybe I have a thing for mysteries, and a mysterious woman being hunted by one of the galaxy's most dangerous organizations? That's hard to resist. A faint smile curved her lips, though caution lingered in her eyes. Careful, stranger. Flirting with me could be hazardous to your health. I've always liked a challenge, Leo replied with a grin. Hazards are what make life interesting, he said, gesturing toward the club's back entrance. You'd better move before they wake up. These guys usually travel in bigger groups. Astra glanced at the fallen men and then back at Leo. You seem to know a lot about them. I make it my business to know things, he replied, turning to walk away, but pausing for a moment. A word of advice. The Shadow Legion has infiltrated nearly all of the major spaceports. If I were you, I'd steer clear of the obvious escape routes. And why should I trust your advice? Astra asked. Leo smiled under his helmet, recalling how she had asked him the same question years ago when he'd suggested sneaking into the Caldwell Library after hours. You shouldn't. It's dangerous out here on the rim, but I'm not the one hunting you. He activated his stealth mode, letting the armor blend into the misty darkness as he moved silently away. He heard her mutter, "Show off." Leo grinned. She had no idea who he really was, but he intended to keep an eye on her. After all, he owed the Caldwells a debt. More importantly, he needed to understand why the Shadow Legion was after her. The hunt was on, but this time he wasn't the prey. And maybe, just maybe, he could repay an old debt while figuring out why her presence still made his heart race after all these years. From his vantage point on top of the Crimson Nebula's roof, Leo observed Astra navigating the crowded streets. Even in the thick fog, her pink hair was a beacon. She had changed her jacket, but her movements were still precise, calculated. You're getting sloppy, he murmured to himself, noting how she stuck to the main roads. Any Shadow Legion operative worth their salt would be watching those paths. His armor's heads-up display highlighted 4 more operatives tailing her from a distance. They were skilled, using the crowd as cover, never maintaining a direct line of sight for too long. But Leo had spent years mastering the art of surveillance, both as the hunter and the hunted. Astra ducked into the Golden Dragon Noodle Shop, one of Haven's shadier establishments. Leo couldn't help but smile. Smart move. The owner of the shop was notorious for a strict no-violence policy, supported by a network of very impressive security systems. He switched to thermal imaging, tracking her as she settled into a corner booth. The 4 operatives split up, 2 entering the shop while the other 2 stayed outside. Time to take a closer look, Leo muttered, adjusting his armor to blend in as a typical Rimworld trader. The shop's interior was thick with steam from large cooking pots, the air heavy with spices. Leo ordered a bowl of noodles and sat down where he could keep an eye on both Astra and the operatives. She was different from how he remembered her. The awkward teenage girl had transformed into a striking woman, but there was a hardness to her now, a warrior's edge that hadn't been there before. What had changed in the years since he left? "Your noodles, sir," the server droid announced, placing a steaming bowl in front of him. "Thanks," Leo replied, noticing Astra tense at the sound of his voice. Her eyes flickered toward him, then quickly looked away. Interesting. Had she recognized something familiar in his tone? One of the Legion operatives stood up and made his way toward her table. Leo's hand instinctively moved to the concealed weapon at his side. "Mind if I join you?" the operative asked casually, though there was an unspoken threat in his tone. Astra's smile was cold. "Actually, I do mind. I'm not in the mood for company." The man sat down with a friendly demeanor. "Anyway, we're just here to talk business. I had told your friends earlier." "Go to hell." The operative leaned forward, his tone stern. "The Legion always gets what it wants, Lady Astra. You're only making things more difficult for yourself." "Am I?" she replied calmly, sipping her tea, unbothered. "Tell me, does the Legion always send its B team for important missions, or am I just a special case?" Leo almost choked on his noodles. She had changed more than just physically. The shy girl he had once known would never have been bold enough to show such open defiance. The operative's expression darkened. "You think this is a game? We know about the Keystone. Hand it over, and maybe we'll let you walk away." The mention of the Keystone caught Leo's attention. The Caldwell Keystone was thought to be a myth, a legendary artifact capable of unlocking ancient technologies. "If you knew anything about the Keystone," Astra replied coolly, "you'd know better than to threaten me in public." She stood up, leaving some credits on the table. The operative grabbed her wrist. "We're not done here." In one smooth motion, Astra twisted her arm free and pressed something against his neck. Actually, we are. This is a neural disruptor aimed at your carotid artery. One wrong move, and you'll spend the rest of your life drooling in a medical facility. Leo's respect for her grew. He would need to be more careful in his surveillance. She was clearly more dangerous than he had first realized. The operative slowly raised his hands. This isn't over. It never is, Astra replied as she backed away, keeping the disruptor trained on him until she reached the door. Then she disappeared into the foggy street. Leo waited 3 minutes before following. The Legion operatives were regrouping, speaking into encrypted comms. He would need to hack their frequency later as he followed Astra through the winding streets of the city. Questions swirled in his mind. The keystone was supposed to be locked in the Caldwell vault. If she had it, something major must have happened at the estate. In the distance, Astra's pink hair disappeared into a rundown hotel. Leo found a shadowy perch across the street and settled in for a long night of surveillance. What have you gotten yourself into? He wondered aloud. And what's really going on with the keystone? The fog thickened around him, but his mind remained clear. Tomorrow, he'd have to get closer, maybe even make contact again. The Legion wouldn't give up easily, and despite her impressive display at the noodle shop, she couldn't handle them alone. Even if she didn't realize it yet, she needed him. And maybe, just maybe, this was his chance to make up for disappearing all those years ago. As dawn crept over Haven's edge, the perpetual fog never truly lifted. Leo's armor adjusted its temperature regulation while he kept watch. The hotel where Astra had taken refuge was exactly the kind of place Leo would choose, cheap enough to be overlooked, but with multiple escape routes. Movement caught his eye. Astra emerged onto the small balcony of her room, her pink hair tied back, wearing what appeared to be training gear. She began a series of fluid movements that Leo recognized as Quell combat forms, but with modifications he'd never seen before. His armor's enhanced vision revealed the subtle shimmer of tech integrated into her clothing, defensive measures, but also something more sophisticated. The way she moved suggested she had augmented the traditional forms with... Was that Amazonian battle dance? The memory hit him like a plasma burst. Him, 12 years old, hiding in the cargo hold of an Amazonian ship, watching through the grating as warriors performed the same movements. The same ship that had accidentally carried him away from the Caldwell estate. Quite a view, isn't it? The voice behind him nearly made him jump. Nearly. 15 years of survival training kept him perfectly still as he processed two crucial facts. One, someone had managed to sneak up on him despite his armor sensors, and two, he recognized that gravelly tone. Rook, Leo said without turning, still playing both sides of every fence in the galaxy? The information broker chuckled, settling beside him on the ledge. Her cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Astra's training routine. The Shadow Legion's offering a fortune for information on her whereabouts, Rook said casually. Enough to buy a small moon. Yet here you are, telling me instead of them. Maybe I'm telling them too, she grinned, showing teeth just a bit too sharp to be natural. Or maybe I'm repaying an old debt to a certain estate. Leo tensed. What do you know about the estate? I know the prodigal son might want to check his old channels. There's been chatter. Before Leo could press her further, movement below caught their attention. Two figures in civilian clothes entered the hotel, their gait betraying military training. Legion. Scouts had reported that they were getting better at blending in. Leo was already moving. How much time until the main force arrives? About 20 minutes, maybe less. They're being cautious after what happened last night. She handed him a data chip. This should even things out for Proxima and Free. By the time Leo turned back, she was already gone. As usual. On her balcony, Astra froze mid-motion, tilting her head slightly. She sensed something, too. Leo watched as she casually stretched before slipping back inside, but not before hiding a small defense drone in her hand. Leo activated his armor's tactical display, scanning the area. More Legion operatives were moving into position, at least a dozen. This wasn't just a simple capture anymore. They were preparing for a full-scale tactical assault. His hand hovered near his communicator, but he stopped himself. Warning her directly would expose too much. Watching her walk into an ambush, however, brought back a memory. Astra, 10 years old, with tears in her eyes after a fall during combat training. "I don't need help," she had insisted, even as he helped her up. Some things never changed. Back at the hotel, the front desk droid suddenly malfunctioned, emitting warning signals on every frequency. Any experienced runner would recognize it as a sign of danger. Sure enough, Astra appeared moments later through a service entrance, moving calmly but with purpose. She changed into street clothes, her pink hair hidden under a hood. The defense drone hovered nearby, disguised as a regular companion bot. "Clever girl," Leo muttered. She had spotted the trap and was already planning her escape, but she hadn't noticed the Legion sniper on the roof of the recycling plant. Time to decide. He could stay hidden and watch how she dealt with it, or... The sniper's rifle powered up. Leo's armor instantly calculated the shot trajectory. "Sorry," he whispered, "but we're doing this my way." He leapt from his position, his stealth mode short-circuiting with the sudden movement. Time seemed to slow as Astra looked up, her eyes widening as he descended toward her. The sniper fired, plasma bolts whizzing where Astra had been standing just a moment before. Leo's tackle knocked them both behind a cargo container as her defense drone returned fire, forcing the sniper to pull back. "You?" Astra hissed, managing to look both angry and composed despite their close proximity. She immediately shifted into a defensive stance. "Following me now. Less talking, more running," Leo suggested. His armor's tactical display lit up with hostile signatures. "Unless you want to explain to the Legion how you got one of their operatives drooling all over the noodle shop." A faint smile crossed her face before vanishing. "I work alone." "Great, so do I," Leo said, gesturing to the increasingly perilous situation. "But right now, we've got 12 heavily armed operatives closing in on our position." He paused, his sensors detecting more signatures. "Make that 16. They really want whatever you're carrying." Astra's hand instinctively moved to her chest, where Leo sensed a faint energy signature. "The keystone?" "No, something else." "Fine," she said, conceding as plasma fire started melting their cover. "Do you have a way out?" Leo's HUD highlighted a maintenance tunnel 30 meters away. "Maybe." "Trust me?" "No," but her eyes glimmered with amusement. "Lead the way, mystery man." They moved in perfect harmony, as if 15 years of separation hadn't existed. Leo provided cover while Astra's drone created interference in the fog, making it almost impossible for their enemies to target them. Up close, her movements were even more impressive. Smooth, fluid, a combination of Caldwell techniques and something wild, unpredictable. "The maintenance tunnel," Leo called as they reached the access point. "It'll lead us to the lower markets." "I know." She was already bypassing the security panel. "I scouted all the escape routes when I arrived." "Of course you did." The panel beeped green as they descended into the tunnel. Leo noticed Astra eyeing his armor. "That's not just stolen tech," she said between breaths. "You know how to use it. Really use it." "Maybe I'm a fast learner. Maybe you're lying." The tunnel opened into a maze of underground markets. Leo led them through sharp turns, using his armor's mapping system to stay ahead of their pursuers. "The Legion doesn't give up easily," he warned as they emerged. In the crowded marketplace, there were people keeping an eye on the spaceports and train stations. Astra's voice, heavy with experience, spoke clearly. She glanced sideways at him. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I left you once, and I've regretted it every day since," he thought. "Because seeing you again in that noodle shop brought back every memory I've tried to bury." But instead he said, "Maybe I just enjoy irritating the Legion." She didn't seem entirely convinced. They slowed to a walk, blending with the crowd. "That armor, there's only one set like it. It was built for an explosion." The marketplace shook behind them as the blast echoed. Amidst the chaos, Leo felt Astra slip something into his pocket. "Meet me at the Rust Bucket Cantina at sunset," she whispered. "If you're really who I think you are, we need to talk." Before he could respond, she vanished into the panicking crowd. His armor's sensors lost her trail almost instantly. Leo found a quiet corner and checked his pocket. Inside, there was a small holographic projector. When he activated it, a younger version of Astra and himself appeared, training together at the Caldwell estate. Below the image was a simple message. "Hello, Leo." He stared at the message for a long moment before allowing himself a small smile. She had known, maybe not right away, but she'd figured it out. Now the question was, What was she really after? The cantina at sunset. It could be a trap, most likely was. But as Leo slipped the projector back into his pocket and began planning alternate routes through the city, he realized he didn't care anymore. After 15 years of running, maybe it was time to stop. Maybe it was time to confront not only Astra, but everything he had left behind at the estate. His armor's systems detected more Legion signatures approaching. First things first, survive until sunset. Then he would find out what had changed in the past 15 years, and perhaps, just perhaps, discover why the most secure artifact in the Caldwell Vault was now apparently at play. The Rust Bucket lived up to its name. Leo arrived early, securing a shadowy booth with clear sightlines to all exits. His armor's camouflage made him nearly invisible in the dim light, but he knew Astra would find him. She always did. She entered exactly at sunset, her pink hair streaked with subtle chrome that deflected any scanning attempts. Clever. She had changed into a fitted black outfit that made his heart skip. Some things never changed. "You know," she said as she slid into the booth, "normal people just send a message when they want to reconnect. When have either of us ever been normal?" Her laugh was soft and genuine. "Fair point," she said, studying him openly now. "Take off the helmet, Leo. I want to see your face." He hesitated only for a moment before complying. The armor retracted, revealing features that had hardened over the years, though still retaining enough of the boy she once knew to make her breath catch. "You've changed," she said, her eyes lingering on the scar along his jaw. "Amazonian training accident? Turns out they don't like stowaways, even young ones." "I remember when you disappeared," she said quietly, a vulnerable look flashing across her face. "Uncle Rain told me not to worry, but you did anyway," he finished. "You were my first." He trailed off. "My first training partner," she caught herself, her voice trailing slightly. A waiter droid approached. Astra tensed, her hand instinctively moving toward her weapon when Leo ordered raw meat. "Problem?" he asked, noticing her reaction. She forced a laugh, but it sounded strained. No, it's just..." She hesitated, glancing around nervously. "You're not gonna... She paused, her face flushing. "You don't eat people, do you?" Leo nearly choked on his drink. "What?" She was blushing now, her blue skin darkening. "I used to see Uncle Rain with Aunt Naomi. And he would with his tongue, and she would." Understanding began to dawn. Leo burst into laughter, attracting curious glances from nearby patrons. "You think I'm going to eat you?" He chuckled, unable to mask the amusement in his voice. "Is that why you've been keeping your distance?" "Well, humans are predators, and Uncle Rain practically devours Aunt Naomi's face whenever they're together." She stopped herself, realizing how absurd she sounded. "Oh gods, that was kissing, wasn't it?" Yes. His use of her old nickname made her flush even deeper. "I promise, I have no plans to eat you." Though, as he leaned in closer, his voice dropped. "There are other things I'd rather do with these lips." Their eyes met, and the air around them crackled with 15 years of unspoken feelings. "You're still impossible," she whispered, though she didn't pull away. "And you're still beautiful when you're flustered." Before she could respond, his armor sensors blared a warning. Legion signatures approaching fast. "Time to go," she said, already moving. "Time to go," he confirmed, his helmet reforming. "But this conversation isn't over. It better not be." She handed him something as they stood, a security card for one of Haven's luxury hotels, room 1542. "We really need to talk about the Keystone." "Just talk?" Her smile was both shy and daring. "We'll see how good you are at not eating me." They parted ways as plasma fire shattered the Cana's windows, but Leo couldn't stop grinning. Some fears were worth facing head-on, and some reunions were worth waiting 15 years for. Now, he just had to survive long enough to make it to that hotel room. The luxury hotel's security systems barely registered Leo's presence as he slipped through their detection grid. His armor had already adapted to their scanning frequency. IES room 1542 was on the top floor, classic Astra, always choosing high ground with multiple escape routes. He found her on the balcony, the city lights playing across her blue skin. She had let her pink hair down, and the sight of it flowing in the breeze brought a flood of memories. "Took you long enough," she said without turning. "I counted at least 3 easier infiltration routes you passed up." "Maybe I wanted to impress you." "You already did that." Now she turned, and the vulnerability in her expression caught him off guard. Earlier at the cantina, I'm sorry about the eating thing. I know it sounds ridiculous now. Leo retracted his helmet and moved closer. Actually, I found it adorable. Adorable? She raised an eyebrow, trying to look offended but failing. I'm a highly trained operative carrying one of the most dangerous artifacts in the galaxy. I am not adorable. Keep telling yourself that. He was close enough now to see the slight flutter of her pulse at her throat. You're still that same girl who used to follow me around the training grounds, asking if humans really had multiple stomachs. That was one time, she said, laughing now. And you're the one who told me humans could unhinge their jaws like snakes. Which you believed for 3 whole months. They were inches apart now. The playful moment shifted into something more intense as Leo reached up to brush a strand of pink hair from her face. I missed you, he admitted softly. Every day I thought about coming back. Why didn't you? There was no accusation in her voice, just genuine curiosity. At first, I couldn't. The Amazonians aren't big on letting their guests leave. By the time I could, he gestured at his armor. I'd learned things, dangerous things. I thought staying away would keep you safe. And now? Now I realize how stupid that was. His hand cupped her cheek. You clearly don't need my protection. Astra leaned into his touch. No, but I might want it anyway. When the kiss finally happened, it was nothing like the devouring she had feared. It was soft, tentative at first, then deepened as 15 years of separation melted away. Her hands found their way to his chest, where the armor had retracted to allow the contact. When they finally parted, her eyes were wide with wonder. That was definitely not eating. Disappointed, his grin turned wicked. She hit his arm playfully. Shut up. Then, more seriously, we really need to talk about the Keystone. The Legion isn't the only one after it. I know. He kept one arm around her waist, unwilling to let go completely. But first, tell me something. Did you really not recognize me at first, or were you playing me? Honestly, I suspected as soon as I saw how you moved in that armor. Only one person ever learned my tells that well. She traced the scar on his jaw. But I needed to be sure. The Leo I knew wouldn't have left without saying goodbye. I'm not that boy anymore. Good. Her smile turned mischievous. Because I'm definitely not that girl. A distant explosion lit up the... Under the night sky, tension filled the air. Their warrior instincts kicked in, ready for whatever came next. Legion, he asked as his helmet reformed. Astra was already in motion, gathering her gear. She was prepared to show him what else she had learned, aside from not eating people. Leo grabbed her arm, pulling her close for a quick kiss. Stay close this time. Always, she replied, activating her defensive systems as the tech hummed to life around her. Just remember, if you try to actually eat me, I know at least 7 ways to knock you out. Only 7? You've been slacking. They exchanged one last grin before reality hit them. The Legion was on its way. The Keystone was still in play, and they had a lot of ground to cover. But for the first time in 15 years, neither of them was running alone. Maybe, just maybe, that would make all the difference. The battle against the Shadow Legion's main forces turned Haven's Edge into a full-blown war zone. Leo and Astra fought back to back, his adaptive armor complementing her Caldwell artifacts. Behind you, Astra called out, creating a shield with her defense systems just as plasma fire erupted around them. Leo spun, taking out 3 operatives with perfect precision. Just like training days, he said, except with more people trying to kill us. Speak for yourself, she replied, flipping over a Legion agent. Using her enhanced agility, she planted a neural disruptor on his neck. I always had people trying to kill me during training. The Legion commander emerged from their dropship, carrying tech that made Leo's armor sensors sound alarms. The Keystone, the commander demanded. Astra's hand found Leo's, ready to end this once and for all. She squeezed his hand. Together, they moved in perfect sync, years of training blending with their combat experience. Leo's armor adapted, amplifying Astra's artifacts, creating a feedback loop of pure Caldwell tech that lit up the foggy night. The Legion never stood a chance. The Caldwell estate looked just as Leo remembered it, the ancient architecture seamlessly blending with modern technology. As their ship touched down, he felt Astra's nervous energy. They'll be happy to see you, she reassured him. Despite the 15-year gap, the first voice Leo heard was Rain Caldwell's. Standing at the landing pad, his commanding presence still felt as powerful as ever, but a smile tugged at his lips. "Took you long enough, boy," he said as they disembarked. Leo straightened. "Sir, I—" He was interrupted by Rain's embrace. "Welcome home, son." Naomi appeared beside her husband, looking exactly as Leo remembered. "We kept your room ready," she said with a knowing smile. "Though you might prefer different accommodations now." Her eyes flickered to Astra, who blushed. "You knew?" Leo asked. "All this time? Of course I knew. The Amazonians owed me a favor. They kept you safe and trained you." Rain's expression grew more serious. "You needed to find your own path, Leo, and you did, and you found your way back to what really matters," Naomi added, watching as Astra slipped her hand into Leo's. Later that evening, in the estate's ancient gardens, Leo knelt before Astra. His armor had completely retracted, leaving him vulnerable, but unafraid. 15 years ago, I left without saying goodbye," he said, holding out a ring, infused with both Caldwell tech and Amazonian craftsmanship. "Let me spend the rest of my life saying hello." Astra's eyes sparkled with a mix of tears and mischief. "Promise not to eat me?" "Promise," Leo said with a grin. "Though I can't guarantee I won't nibble." She tackled him with a kiss. Before he could finish, their wedding brought together not only two hearts, but also two vastly different worlds. One of technology and the other of tradition. The Amazonian warriors who had trained Leo stood side by side with the Caldwell family, observing as ancient vows were exchanged with a touch of modern flair. "The Shadow Legion never stood a chance," Rain said to Naomi, watching the celebration unfold. "Not when those two are together," Naomi responded, leaning against her husband. "Did they ever?" Rain smiled. "I just gave them the opportunity. They did the rest on their own." From the dance floor, Astra's laughter filled the air as Leo twirled her in a movement that was part Amazonian battle dance, part formal waltz. Their combined technologies created beautiful light patterns, celebrating their union. "To new beginnings," Rain raised his glass. "And to old endings," Naomi added, her gaze fixed on their family. Once fractured, now dancing together under the stars. The Caldwell estate had gained more than just a son who had returned. It had gained a future brimming with promise, guarded by two warriors who had found their way back to each other. And if at times Astra teased Leo about eating her, well, it only made him love her more. The wedding festivities were in full swing, with guests from across the galaxy mingling in the Caldwell estate's grand ballroom. Leo held Astra close as they danced, their combined technologies creating radiant patterns of light. Then, suddenly, the fabric of reality itself tore open on the dance floor. A swirling vortex of temporal energy erupted, sending the guests scrambling. Through the portal tumbled a young couple, a handsome man with Nordic features, and a striking woman with unmistakable traits of Rain and Naomi, followed by a massive spectral cat made of starlight and shadows. "Luna!" Naomi gasped, recognizing her daughter despite the distortion of time. Before anyone could react, the ghostly feline lunged toward the wedding party. Rain moved with incredible speed, his ceremonial sword igniting with ancient technology as he sliced through the creature, its form dissolving into light particles. "That was close," Luna remarked, brushing off her dimensional travel suit. The young man, Nord, helped her to her feet. "According to my calculations," Rain said with a grin, "you were supposed to arrive 15 minutes ago." Luna and Nord exchanged guilty glances. "Well, Dad, there's a funny story behind that," Luna started. "We may have accidentally created some temporal anomalies while trying to get here." "A few?" Nord added, running a hand through his messy hair. "A few?" Luna elbowed him. "You're the one who thought it'd be fun to take a detour through the crystalline nebula." "Hey, I was just trying to avoid the quantum storms you caused." Rain laughed, cutting through their bickering. "Welcome to the celebration, both of you." He embraced them warmly. "Next time, though, maybe leave the interdimensional pets at home." Leo and Astra approached the newcomers, their tech still buzzing in harmony. "So, this is the famous Nord?" Leo grinned. "The guy who accidentally got pulled into the estate through Luna's first temporal experiment and never wanted to leave," Nord confirmed, gazing adoringly at Luna. "Like father, like daughter," Naomi remarked, taking Rain's hand. "We sure do attract interesting people." The celebration continued. now filled with tales of temporal adventures and interdimensional mishaps. As the evening went on, the Caldwell estate witnessed not just one, but many love stories, each unique, each powerful, and somehow, each exactly as Rain had predicted. Did you know about them too? Astra asked her uncle, as they watched Luna and Nord demonstrate what they claimed was a dance from the 47th century. My dear, Rain smiled mysteriously, probability is a strange thing. Sometimes, the most unlikely paths lead exactly where they're supposed to. Leo pulled Astra close, as long as those paths lead home. And don't involve being eaten, Astra added with a wink. Above them, the temporal rift finally sealed, leaving only stars, laughter, and the promise of adventures yet to come. After all, in the Caldwell family, happily ever after was just the beginning. Well, dear listener, you've reached the end. I hope you've enjoyed the twists, turns, and temporal rifts of the Caldwell family saga as much as I've enjoyed sharing them with you. Was it what you expected? Or did the galactic weddings and giant spectral cats catch you off guard? Either way, thank you for sticking around. If you've been charmed by the chaos of the Caldwell family, I've got a treat for you. The first 2 parts of this tale are in the description below, so you can dive into how Rain earned his legacy and the moment Luna first meets Nord as the multiverse begins to really have some fun. For now, my wonderful listener, I'm off to explore even more stories. If you'd like to keep adventuring with me, hit that like button and leave a note. It's the best way to let me know we're on the right track. Until next time, take care. And remember, there's always another adventure waiting just out there.